Page number 139, the fifth line from the bottom. So you're attaining two different forms of Rupakaya and also the Dharmakaya, and also the Buddha body, the two different forms of Buddha body. Although I have not checked that the original, the translation is done like this, well, you need to include the Sambhogakaya. It refers to the three kaya, the Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Dharmakaya. When we say you have become Buddha, it is completion of those three forms or three kayas. When we say they have attained the Rupakaya, the body, even us, the lay people, we also have a body form. And about the sentient beings, normally people live with in accordance with your greediness, and they assume that that is their happiness, and that's why they don't have the that's why they do not have the Sambhogakaya, and that is only attainable through the offerings or contribution to the other sentient beings. Then you could also ask if the Sambhogakaya, the body or place, well, in reality, it is not like our body, but you can see the body comes to being. People, especially people study Hinayana or people with a shallow understanding of Buddhism, then they are not able to understand this part. And even the Dharmakaya, what is Dharmakaya? It is attaining the enlightened thoughts. So all these three things, they should also be discussed. But if we only say Dharmakaya, the Nirmanakaya or Sambhogakaya, well, if we go to Hua Monastery, they have the three kaya, the Buddha, the three Buddhas. That is the completed mandala of the Buddha. Only with that we say it's completed. So with the omniscience, with disappearance of all agonies, they have the potential or ability to see things as it is. And for the good of all sentient beings, they have attained the six paramitas, and with the virtue of the six paramitas, we say the person has attained the Sambhogakaya. And what is the Nirmanakaya? It is the person who has a manifestation of manifestation for the good of our body or good of us. These are all the sayings or teachings done in the Avatamsaka Sutra. And when he was teaching the Avatamsaka Sutra, there were 1,250 the Hinayanas Arahants and about 140. Well, when he started his very first teaching, the very first teaching started was something like this. When I teach this, it fears me a little because people could misunderstand. Even if I teach this as a teaching, some people take it as a superstitious understanding. That's why it fears me a little. So even though Avatamsaka Sutra, I hesitate in teaching a little in fear that there could be some people who misunderstand. So I'm in a very difficult position to explain this. In Avatamsaka Sutra, whether in the introduction part or the overall part of the Avatamsaka Sutra, the first time when he was giving his teaching, it was the time when he attained his enlightenment. And at the time, it was a time before he spoke to the five bhikkhus. He spoke in front of the merchants, and the people that we could see were only the merchants. Buddha spoke about the body of bliss and also the Dharmakaya, and when he was teaching at the time, the normal lay people, the merchants, they thought it was only them over there. But Buddha did not give the teaching to the merchants. But he spoke to 500 bodhisattvas who were gathered. And even when he was speaking, teaching in the 보강명전, there were 1,250 arhants and also 500 different bodhisattvas, Tara, Manjushri. The 140 names of the bodhisattvas who were there are also mentioned. Even the Kritikarpa was there. Well, if we say this, some people also argue if they were there, he could have spoken. But the fact is, although we are not able to see them, for us, it's that he was speaking out in the air, open air. But Buddha could see everyone. So for people, they could only see the merchants. And the merchants, since they sat down to listen to the sayings of the great saints, they sat down to listen, but they got scared in between, and they also said they were busy and they walked away. But Buddha did not stop his teaching. He kept speaking for the 500 bodhisattvas. So even the bodhisattvas who are above the 9 grounds of the bodhisattva or the 10 grounds of the bodhisattva, only the bodhisattvas who are in that level, the names were there, and that's why the merchants, they could not see them. Even in Diamond Sutra, the Chinese 현장, Venerable 현장, when you see the translation of the Kumarajam, even in the Diamond Sutra, the Chinese, Korean, and the Sanskrit version, the Tibetan, if you compare them, only the Chinese version is different. Well, the contents are same until 1,250. But it's written in the Chinese version that but in the original, they mentioned the bodhisattvas. But then why in Chinese translation bodhisattvas are missing? And they have only written 1,250. That's because the Chinese people, they do not have the potential to intake them. Later, they also talk about the heavenly beings and also asuras, but they don't have the bodhisattvas. Well, isn't the Sanskrit the most original one? And in the Sanskrit, you can see the bodhisattvas mentioned. Why did such problem arise? When you ask a question, in China, the Chinese could not understand the relationship or between the faith of the bodhisattvas, that how they could be there. And that's why I spoke to you in Sonunsa last time. In Sonunsa, I spoke to you that there's also they showed the body of the Kritikarva Bodhisattva. And Jinpursa saw him in person, and he has built a statue, and that is the Kumsangsa's Mirukjan. So do not just go there and say it's so grand all the time. Sometimes when you see it's very unpleasant. But some would say that why was it built so big? Because the Sambhogakaya, you see in a very majestic form because of the virtues. If you have a good understanding of them, then you would also understand the Avalokitesvara in Korea. That's the Naksansa. You know the Hongyeonam? And also the Podok Cave. Although that is in North Korea, he showed himself in Podok Cave. It's a place where he left his Sambhogakaya. That's why we say that's a sacred place. Not just it's not just a belief. So the people who listen to the teaching of the Avatamsaka Sutra are those that you know very well. The Avalokitesvara, Kritik Arba, Tara. They are all of them, as you know very well. We say they are the bodhisattvas who are already in the land of Dharmaklas. And in other words, they are those although they are not in the level of Buddha, their agony has all been disappeared. And rather than their desire to become Buddha, they believe that they need to they want to spend their time or their life for the betterment of all sentient beings. And with that agony, they have not yet become Buddha, but they have already attained whatever else is necessary. And they have listened to the Avatamsaka Sutra in 7 different places for 9 different times. And if you ask why is the Arahant they cannot see, because they have not attained the first stage of Bodhisattva. And also they have not cultivated the sense of Bodhisattva, and they do not accept the power of the virtue. Well, it's why can't we see? We also have the same reason as the Arahant, but also we only try to see the Rupakaya, only the outer appearance. That's why we are not able to see it. And that's the shallowness of our lay people. That's why Avalokitesvara or Manjushri or Kritikalpa, the 140 great Mahasattvas who are in the Avatamsaka Sutra. When you say Mahasattva, they are also the great teachers of Bodhisattvas. Even when you're at our death, they have the potential to lead us. Even when reciting the mantras, if you have such faith, then the strength of the mantras would also strengthen. But if you don't believe in it, and if you only want to accumulate virtue, then it doesn't have any use. It's not useful at all.
부처님께서 그 어마어마한 대십지보살들 500명을 앉혀놓고서 설법을 하셨다.
So Buddha made those great 500 Mahasattvas sit down and he spoke to them. And normal bodhisattvas, they cannot even understand. And spoke about the different levels or different stages to get to the final state. When you read the Lotus Sutra, you can understand it completely.
그 상수계중 1250명은 그 지금 부처님께서 법문을 하시는데 부처님께서 잠은 자다 뭐 그런 줄 알아. 부처님께서 당신 혼자
Well,
무지보살이 일어나서 얘기했다야.
when Muji Bosal or Bodhisattva was spoken, discussing with Buddha, people thought Buddha was only speaking himself. When he was discussing, you have to look at the sentence forms.
이분은 아마도 뭐 팔찌 이런 모양이라. 그 간세보살의
It seems like the Bodhisattvas about the eighth stage.
그 모습을 보니까 팔찌보살이 신심이 나. 그 무지보살이 일어나서 적정자기에서 편단 누견하고 그 지금 보인단 말이에요. 그 간세보살 대중에게 저 간세보살이면 어떤 이유로 뛰어나기로
Avalokitesvara, for which reason? Why
저렇게 위대한 모습이 돼 있습니까? 저렇게 보시면 완벽하게
How did Avalokitesvara attain the Sambhogakaya in such a great form and also has attained such a great title? Some of us has a form that is not really good to look at, but how did Avalokitesvara attain such a good form? And when that question was asked, Buddha said, Avalokitesvara, that bodhisattva is.
일체 중생이 처음 발생할
Likewise, true in this way, from the very first beginning, when a sentient being wanted to cultivate the sense of bodhisattva, Avalokitesvara had the aspiration to help the sentient being only if they call out their name.
내 나를 상징하는 엄만이 반면 이 영꽃과 같은
So the Om Mani Padme Hum, which symbolizes Avalokitesvara, which is like a lotus, only if you recite even this mantra, Avalokitesvara wished that person could be free from the agni, and with such a heart, for so many different thousands of countless lives, has gone through a severe practice, and that has been attained. That's why Avalokitesvara has attained that form right now.
얘기를 해주신 거예요.
Buddha has explained that story, and that's why even in Lotus Sutra, such sayings, or in monasteries, it's a place where the Kritikarbha showed himself, and in Kamsa Monastery, there's also the place where the Maitreya Bodhisattva came, and Venerable Jinpyo met him in person, and Venerable Jinpyo in person, he got
지장 삼부경을 지장 보능경과 지장경과 성악정찰 업보경
the
가지 하고 미륵보살한테서는 뭘 받았냐면 170, 167개가 된 간자 요즘 같은 산대 같은 비슷한 거. 이 안에 실제적인 건 몰라요.
he received 167 material for the practice from the Maitreya Bodhisattva. And after receiving this, and also when he passed the first stage of Bodhisattva, even if Venerable Jinpyo did not propagate Buddhism, so much mass gathered, and so the Shula, they thought, the politicians thought he was having a revolt or revolution. And so he went to Babcho monastery, and so many people gathered there. And although it is not the place where the Maitreya Bodhisattva showed himself, but because it follows, or it has the spirit of Maitreya Bodhisattva, they have the statue so grand of that of the Maitreya Buddha. It applies the same for our Prajnaparamita Sutra. Well, we have removed the first and the conclusion part, but we have only started. We only have the script that's easy for us to remember. But even in there's also the sayings of Buddha for the lay people, and even in the Avatamsaka Sutra, it's spoken about the Sambhogakaya. And even in Korea, we have many great saints, quite a lot of great saints who has seen the Sambhogakaya. And even in Shilla dynasty, Chimpursa has seen the Bodhisattva. They are the people who have actually seen them, in person. And also, even the and even the Nagarjuna, even the Nagarjuna wanted to deny that existence of those, and so he said he will practice this, and if it's not there, he'll break it off. But he actually could succeed with the practice. So just like a child, when the child is crying in the kindergarten, since the mother is not in front of the child thinks the mother is not there. And just like that, you are just reciting your mantras and you don't have so much faith, and so you don't believe that it is there. Our greatest mistake is one of the things that you are calling out for Avalokitesvara, but you doubt its existence. You have a great saint in front of you, and you are under your own illusion, so you are doing something else, so you don't even know how to make an offering. And also, even if you have called out for a beggar who is walking on the street, if you call the person and do not even offer a glass of water, you could also be beaten to death. So we are not asking you to have your meditation for a noun, but just like that, when you're asked to call the title, the strength of the teacher, and also the power of the strength of the study, and also because my strength of study is weak, you're calling for your teacher, and you want to follow that path, and inside the religious meaning, such a meaning is already included. And so people who does not believe in them, they hide in a corner, and when they do wrong things, and they also think that no one would know, but that's your misunderstanding. They have already the 6 supernatural powers open. Well, even in Dharma Sutra, it's written that they can see and they know all. Do you think Buddha has lied? After eating the expensive offerings made to him, do you think he has spoken about something that is not true? So when you enter into Mahayana, the practice method is the pranya paramita. We discuss about those things, but the essence here. Well, it's been about 31 years we started this Monday teaching. Well, if you believe in this story and in this Mahayana, well, the saying is the belief is a seed for all. Well, but in the teaching of Mahayana, the great status of the bodhisattva. If you don't believe that there is a practice of such a state, if you don't believe in this and if you still do your practice, then we can say your practice is in vain. You understand? So a teaching should always be a teaching. And also when I say something like this, it becomes like a tail of a snake, and it's a great mistake if it comes back in a weird form. Well, to someone who doesn't understand this properly and to someone who will not try to understand this, don't even tell them this. Do not make the person suffer from his sins because of his unfaithfulness or misunderstanding. This world is a very rugged world, and so the karma is very, very strong, and people are very self-centered, and people live in a very selfish manner. And so if you say something, then people try to bend it to their interest. There are so many cases like that, and so something like that is not also not acceptable. The potential or the strength of the bodhisattvas. Well, the Avalokitesvara is in the 10 grounds of the bodhisattva, and bodhisattva can change his body form to so many different body forms. The 14 fearless, even with the death in front of him, he has no fear. He's someone who has no fear at all. This is not a supernatural power, but this is a strength that Bodhisattva or Avalokitesvara attain through practice. Well, I saw it on TV. The hand was as big as the cover of the utensil, and it has so much extra skin on both the palm and on the hand. And when the person hit something with the strength of everything broke. And the person said the person has been practicing that for 10 years. Well, if he hit some metal, then our hand would break. But that person, with his hand, since he has practiced for 10 years, the metal breaks. And when the person hit the baseball bat, the bat broke. And even the bat, it was not made of wood, but it was made of aluminium. So even the energy that after 10 years of practice, the energy is so great that it's something that we cannot do it. But imagine what kind of strength it could have if Bodhisattvas has been practicing their countless lies for the betterment or for the good of all sentient beings, what strengths can they not have? So, well, I spoke about this before too. The middle school second grade. Well, he was the one who was throwing the ball, and the other person challenged him that he would want to
중학교 2학년인데도 던지는 게 공이
he want to hit the ball, but he could not hit even one of the ball. Although he was very young, although the person was throwing the ball very young, the ball was bending so well, and
너 공이 그렇게 막 커버리거든.
and they're practicing in such a way that they're not cutting their nail and put it in the
밥에다 탁 이렇게 대가지고 던지면서
they're and they're practicing so many different ways to throw the ball.
휙 날아서 이렇게 내려가고
And since they're practicing so many different methods, they are not able to challenge the boys. And also, people who are not practicing together with the boys, they cannot hit it.
중학교 2학년짜리가 해봤자 뭐 제가 초등학교 때부터 했거나 그 정도 됐을 건데 내가 못 친다니까.
They have changed so much after so much practice. Even a very simple power, even the very simple potential of human, depending on how long the person has been practicing that, there are so many different changes.
오랜 세월 동안
If a bodhisattva has been practicing, there are so many lives for the good of all sentient beings, it becomes something that we cannot even imagine. So that's a mystery.
불가사의야.
Well, but for the bodhisattvas of the same level, for them it is not a mystery.
불가사의가 아니야.
To someone who has practiced so up to that level, it is not a mystery. But for someone who has not seen them, it is a mystery. So even the sayings what Buddha has spoken, if it's difficult to understand,
선생들이 이해하기가 힘든 일반 소선들이 이해하기가 힘든 이런 부분은
then amongst even the teachings, 12 different teachings, there's also the mystery there. There is some content which is difficult to comprehend with understanding or thoughts.
생각으로서. 근데 이게 이해가 잘 안 된다 이거. 뭐
There are quite a lot of them which we are not able to understand, but has been so.
부처님과 똑같은 분이 몸도 똑같은 분이
Well, how can you explain that someone who looked like Buddha and someone wearing the same clothes as Buddha, same robes as Buddha, thousands of them appear? Then how can you explain that? And the competitor, the person said that's an illusion, that's like a movie. And the person tried to touch all the thousands of Buddhas, and he could touch all of them. And the person fell there, and he died because he was so surprised. And Buddha has not spoken anything and came down to the ground. And the non-believers, they have just accepted that. Well, the Saravasti, the hills, is such a place. There are many times that Buddha went there to give his teaching. The hill over there is a little mounted, and the people could sit there and listen to the teaching. And it's a great thing. And it's a great spot to give the teaching. And it was also the era where the religion changed from the Brahmin to Buddhism greatly. Well, in our eyes, they look like a mystery. Well, the most funny thing is when you first start off in the military, the captain is a mystery. Especially if they have like two stars, then they're really a mystery. If you are made to stand in front of them, your legs, they would not even budge. But from the opinion of the captain, the person is not mysterious at all.
사단장이 지나가다가 병사 다리 아프다고 사단장 차이로 한번 태워줬다는
Well,
옛날
if the captain has given the person if the common soldier a right, then throughout his military life, he would only think of the right that the captain has given.
모습들 이런 이제
So, with the emission or emitting of such a belief, the true practice of bodhisattva begins. And so, in amongst the 10 beliefs, the first one is such a belief that there is a path of bodhisattva, believing that completely, and that in detail in segregation are the 10 different beliefs. You have to understand in this way.
하음경을 이제 여러분에게 이제 저번에 말씀을 드려서
I went through the Avatamsaka Sutra, the translation. Well, it's between us, but funnily, the North Korean translation is done better. The North Korean scripture is hundreds of times better than our work. So to study that, it hurts our pride a little. Well, it's about like 4 of the 100 pages, but in order for us to do that, we have to make a promise that we are not die, and we have to do that. If you want to do that, then we have to promise that we are not going to be sick or going to be hospitalized. And also, if I die, then even the spirits are going to come and listen. Then we are going to start. But if you want to go and make kimchi while listening to it, then I'm not even going to start it. How many years will it take? Well, that I'm not going to do in such a detail, but I'm going to read them, and only the important parts I'm going to mention. About 50 people has worked on this. Well, the translation I have been thinking about, they have already completed in 93. We have only earned money, but it seems we are zero. We are very poor at literature studies. We only have our pot belly, but we are not very rich in our brain, in terms of our head. So if we start with the North Korean scriptures, then we could read and we could explain the important parts. And one book is about 400 pages, so I think it's also going to be difficult not to die. Well, you can die while listening to the lecture, and let's keep our books on the shelf, and we can come back in our next life, and then we can get our books back. And if we can only attain to such a level, then it will be really pleasant. Well, in Ajanta or Ellora, the cave, I heard that it happened so. The teaching room is 4 to 5 times bigger than this, and where the stone was really hard. When I tried to hit the stairways there, the rocks that they were so hard that my hand did hurt. And to such a rock, they have built a cave, and even in the cave they have built the pillars and also the statue, and it's just one rock. They have carved it out of one single rock, and even the Buddhist the table and all. So since it's all one rock, it cannot be completed in one life. And so throughout their life, they would try to carve, and when they are about to die, they would leave their instruments there and come back. and when they are reborn, about 14 to 15 years,
사람들이 다
well, about 14 and 15-year-old boy comes and says, well, this is mine, and this is something I kept here, and the boy would continue with his work. And so there are also caves that has been completed with 3 to 4 successive lives. Well, if a story has happened so, then it's already proven, isn't it? So nowadays, when you think of it, you could also think, isn't it something that I built before in my previous life? And also people who are here, who are listening to the lecture, I think they could also be people who are also there as an assistant. Well, even when I count, it's not more than 300, and even at the time it was about 300 people. Well, I think so. I think that's how it is. And the death offering day is the 9th day of March, the Venerable Kyung's death, the death offering day. And so I wonder if I have a dream on that day, but I didn't have any dream. Well, there's no way that we will have a dream here, because if we don't do the death offering Sakcha Monastery, then where else would we do it? Well, but then even when we don't have the death offering in Sakcha Monastery, it seems like there's no other place and there's just no dream. People who has where they say that if you eat a lot of food from the death offering table, and if your body hurts, if that happens a couple of times, then it means that it's the day that you died on that day. And I heard that Venerable Kyung has lived about 40-something years and lived up to 80-something, and his consciousness was so clear that he could also dream about natural disasters that was going to happen in Yeosu. And when he had a dream of Admiral Lee, then they always had some marine disaster. And so people who were working in military as a Coast Guard, they always sent people to Venerable Kyung and asked if he didn't have any dream day. So with continued and also deepened relations, we could find out how each other were correlated. After attaining Buddha's omniscience once, then all agony disappears. When we say we have achieved omniscience or cultivated omniscience, in other words, it means all agony has disappeared. All afflictions has disappeared. When we say all afflictions have disappeared, your greediness and also anger and also foolish thoughts has also disappeared. And at nothing, there is no place to rely on, and following the relations, you come and you also go, and you accept that 100%, and there is no afflictions at all, and so you have the Buddha's knowledge or Buddha's omniscience. And after attaining Buddhahood, then there is no affliction, as even like a single strand of a silk, there is no greediness at all. But for us, from the time that we are born until we die, there is greediness arising. That's why we get angry, and we don't even know why we get angry. And we sit and we also have many foolish thoughts. And so After attaining Buddha's omniscience, nothing at all, even there is no law or Buddha's teaching to rely on too at that point of time. Right now we have afflictions. That's why we are consoled by and also taught by Buddha's teachings. But once we are away from it, then there is nothing with which we need help. And also, even if Buddha is in front of us, well, Buddha is just someone who is leading our way as a leader. But then after, if we have attained Buddhahood, then there is no need to have a thought too. Well, think of it. If we have already finished trekking, then there is no need. Well, as a human, we came to this world, and we have attained the complete enlightenment without any confusion. So, as a human, there is nothing more than this. Amongst the past that we live as a human, there's nothing that's greater than this. That's why there is no enlightenment beyond this. It's supreme. There is no enlightenment beyond this. It's the supreme enlightenment. There's nothing beyond this. And so we say Buddha is the supreme yogist, the supreme practitioner. Here the yogi is a practitioner. And it is not only in Buddhism, but also Hinduism. In Hinduism, they accept this, and everyone in this world, they accept this. He has achieved enlightenment with practice of the supreme yoga. Not an instant or not for momentarily, but the human afflictions has disappeared completely, and he has changed to a true human form, and he has a human form that doesn't change. And there is nothing more to discuss about this. With this as a basis, for the good of all sentient beings, with its supernatural powers, until all sentient beings get rid of their sufferings, you need to help. So through this enlightenment, all sentient beings, you teach them the path to get rid of these afflictions and help enable the person to gain enlightenment and get rid of their sufferings. And that is the teachings of Mahayana as a six paramitas, as the methods. And in your heart, you need to have the compassion and love, and also empathy, and also happiness when you see the goodness of all sentient beings. And also you need to be prepared that you are willing to give up everything for them. And also so if you know this story accurately, then rather than getting 10 degrees, 10 PC degrees, it's more important. And if you live your life thinking about them and thinking about this, then just like the way to Bodhisattva, the strength of your study, even when you're sleeping in the night and even in your dream, people changes. People start to change. Or else externally, well, we have a proverb in Yasu, right? The thing that doesn't come to being, even if you try so hard, is that like you put salt on the back of the crab, it doesn't happen. So what do you do? Well, even if you put salt on top of the crab, they don't actually care. So if I have the sense of bodhisattva, well, with the bodhisattva, I have to change.
그게 하나하나
Everything and all the things that we live our life in our selfishness have the proper faith in Buddha's teaching, and if you change one by one,
하나하나 바꾸어 나간다면
then people change.
사람이 달라져 버려 그냥.
Which person ever, doesn't matter in the change, in the difference in the caste or state or gender or property or black and white, or there's no change at all. The mind itself, it should be just like you need to develop the sense of bodhisattva, which is like a jewel.
이익된 일을 하고 내 욕심 부리는
And from the moment you start to think that you want to reduce your selfishness, we change as a gem. So through our samsara, and so in Tibetan we call people Rinpoche who try to rescue people even when they are going through their samsara. They're just like a being of jewels. Why is that so? That's because they have a bodhisattva in them, which is just like a gem. Well, when we say Om Mani Padme Hum, money is just like a gem.
많이 보석이죠, 그죠? 많이 바트메 홈
The comparison is given to the lotus and also the gem. And what is the gem there? The gem is the bodhisattva in our heart to safeguard all sentient beings. I would follow what Shakyamuni has done, and I will go a step and two steps forward. We cannot say the greatness which is like a gem, isn't it?
그럴 수는 없잖아.
That shouldn't happen, and also that cannot be done. So most of them, if you don't do such meditation, well, Tibetans, they pray every day. They listen to mantras, they listen to sutras, they do meditation because they continue to do. They keep changing.
조금씩 다 바뀌는 거야.
Without doing that, even if you listen to it hundreds of days, it's only momentarily, but that doesn't change. And also, if something goes wrong, and if you do not do it properly, it doesn't change. If you don't do it properly.
잘못하면. 이게 중생들의
So we are actually helping sentient beings to reach to the enlightenment. We are helping them to get rid of their suffering. But us, we are only struggling to achieve our happiness. Not many has done for the goodness of others. And therefore,
그렇기 때문에 이번에 조현증 환자
well, there was a serious problem.
얘기 해석이 있을 수 있겠지만
There was a serious problem when the person with mental problem was killed. Why did that start? Why did the mental problem start?
어디로부터 시작해요? 오랜 전생
It started from the selfishness and also greediness of many lives before. If you live in your greediness, you tend to blame others and you become virtueless. And while blaming on others, what happens? You have the sense that you start to feel that your life is miserable because of others. And when that continues in your many lives, then you feel that because of the present, you are not able to live well, and because of mother, because of father, because of neighbor, you will have sense of victim mentality, and you'll continue with virtueless acts. And if that happens, if the selfishness becomes extreme, it becomes depression, and then it leads to mental distortion. Well, when you see people with progress selfishness, they are very narrow-minded. They don't try to help others, and they only very selfish. They don't think for others, and especially for women, when it goes, then they only think for their children. And even when they're thinking about their children, they do have sense of discrimination. In olden times, they only thought of the first son. They never regarded the daughters as important. And even the names, they have just given very easy and very common names. But as for the sons, they name very well. After paying money, but for the daughters, they just give a very free name. You wish daughters are not born anymore, and so you name them the end. And since they're born again, you just give them weird names. You only regard your first son as important and good. And although you have affections to your children, you do have sense of discrimination between the daughters and between the sons. And so, although your children doesn't come to visit you often, you still regard that this property is for your first son. This is for something, but your first son is already in hands of the wife. But when you just look at it, between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law, it's just like a fight for the son. Well, the mother-in-law has given the son, but she needs to be in control, and that's why. Well, even this is an old story. Nowadays, people are kicked off because the daughter-in-law, they're very strong, so they threaten. Well, if you die, we're not even going to do death offering for you. I'll go to church. They threaten. And then after that, in fear that you might not even get a glass of water, you say, okay, I'm not strong enough. Well, but then how about thinking about this? Well, even if you don't give it to me, then even if I'm a ghost, I will get myself a glass of water. Well, there are wells, so I would just get it from anywhere. It seems like that's not okay. But it seems like a ghost cannot eat or cannot drink once it's not offered. A wise man is away, is far from fault, and
대안과 같더니
in wisdom, it's just like a wide sea. So it's just like a swan drinking milk.
현자라는 것은 형자를 얘기합니다. 질투나 분노나 이런
Here, the wise man refers to saint, and all is distant from greediness and also selfishness. So, what is a wise man? Wise man is far from those flows, and those flows are from the greediness and also your desire.
것을 허물었고
So a wise man is free from greediness and also selfishness. And in virtue, there is no satisfaction. It's just like a Pacific. For good of all sentient beings, there's no satisfaction. There's no end to the wish for the all sentient beings. You understand? There's no thought that it's enough with this much.
그러니까 우리가 그 사홍성의 중생무변석은 뭐야? 무변.
And so it's also said that there's no end to end to it, but ultimately everything will be saved. That's very important. So when a bodhisattva has a wish or aspiration, there's something that's very important from it. Well, I can only do up to this much. If you think so, then it's only possible up to that much. Everything is bound to move as your heart goes.
일념 즉시 무량겁 그러죠. 한 생각이
A single thought
수많은 시간 가운데
expands in unlimited time, and ultimately it gets achieved. So in virtue, as with virtue, there should be no satisfaction. Well, I have done this much, so it's okay. If you think so, then it just becomes like a small glass, small sauce bowl. You should not set limits to it.
분별하고 잘 해석하여 파악하니
Uh,
물에서 우유를 취한 것 같네.
with the sense of discrimination and also proper perception.
견해를 가지고서 이렇게
With the proper perception, if you know it's okay or it's not okay, you need to have a clear distinction, and with that you need to set the right perception. If you don't have the right perception, then 100% you'll be swayed with your greediness. And so even listening to the teaching, you'll have your obstructions. Even when you're studying the Buddha's teaching, you'll have your own problems. It's just like a delighted swan drinking milk from water. The delighted swan. The swan is a bird drinking milk from water. Is there milk in water? There is no milk in water. So how can you drink when there is no milk in the water? Just like that, you have to do it in detail. This world is just full of, well, although we feel like we are living in front of death, we cannot even, when you're dead, we cannot even open our eyes when we die, and when our corpses are closed and thrown away, our body has no meaning at all. But while living, we still feel that we need to do this to survive and that to survive. We think of them so much. We only try to be cunning.
그래서 이 세상은 우리가 마치 새가 흰 백조가 저 호수물에서 우유를 건져 먹는
If you don't view this world as in detail, just like the swan drinking milk from water, if you don't do that, then we'll always be filled with in samsara. In such a habit, we'll just feel that while if we listen, it's listening, and while living, we are doing something else. And so, therefore, people should be away from confusion. So a wise man or a saint, a Buddha or great Bodhisattva, they don't have a selfish prejudice. From beginning to the end, they only talk the right things. So hundreds of years or millions of years or unlimited time. And also, even if it's not in human world, even in asuras or even in the heaven, it applies to all. It's not that it is true in some places and it's not true in some other places. It doesn't apply to whites and it doesn't apply only to the blacks too. And so therefore, even when Buddhism is spread throughout the world, there is no race that says Buddhism doesn't apply to us. In Buddhism, when we say in Buddhism, it never happened that it doesn't apply to us, and so that person was considered as a witch and was crucified or was burned to death, or there was a war because of that. For 2,600 years, it never happened even once. Well, look at it in Tibet, in Thailand, in Myanmar. If you listen to the story in Sri Lanka, in fact, there are Tamil separatists. Those separatists are believers of Hinduism, and they are not oppressed by Hinduism, but they do the terrorist attack and they start the conflict. It never happened that Buddhism tried to get rid of or try to destroy religion in some other place. Where Buddhism, they acknowledged even thousands of years ago and even hundreds of years ago, although that other religion could also be exploited, Buddhism never chose to do that. Check if that ever happened in any history. It never happened. So you need to get rid of the prejudice, and also it's spoken at the benefit of all sentient beings. It's very important. It's very, very important. Well, people only try to attain their own benefit, but in fact, not much has been done for the benefit of others. It's only spoken verbally for it. And even to foolish people is well explained. Well, even to foolish people, the teachers, they explain very in detail. And so even if you're not able to understand what teacher has taught, then ask the teacher once again and try to understand. But don't try to interpret on your own and speak publicly about it. then you'd also make first impression to your teachers, and through many different lives, or to many different years, throughout many different years, you leave bad impression. Likewise,
내가 지은 공덕이 무엇이든 그렇게 일체 중생의 중도를 성취하게 하소서. 이와 같이 중도를 내가
likewise, I'm speaking for. I'm teaching this. Well, in other words, Buddhism could also be interpreted as
수를 분류가 뭐냐고 한마디로 그냥 중도야. 중도인데 중도가 뭐냐 그러면 중도는 매우 간단해.
well, it's very simple.
매우 간단해. 중도는 한마디로 얘기해서 공성지감이 있어.
Buddhism is experience of voidness.
중도라 그래.
It is
이 세상 존재하는 모든
everything in this world. It doesn't have eternal property, and so how do they exist? They are depending on dependent arising.
연기법과
Dependent arising and the law of relations, and also the wisdom. And the wisdom is the experience of voidness. It's all same.
그래서
And so
중도로서
Kamala Shila ended this as an experience of voidness.
자리야 정교사라 그래요. 까밀라 신라께서
Acharya Kamala Shila has completed the experience of voidness.
와 역경사 승려 예세
The Indian scholar Prajnawa Rimar and also the translator yesterday has translated and also corrected.
인도의 제야제인 아차리아 정교사 까밀라 신라와 그 위대한 스승 산타락시타 즉코라는 분이 대단한 분입니다. 이는 설력의 히말라야 땅 티벳과 아주 특별한 인연을 가지고 있습니다. 단순히 존경심만
Well, only by paying the respect,
할 수가 없습니다.
it cannot express. But personally, this teaching,
장할 수 있게 된 것을 너무
I feel grateful that I am able to teach and continue with the teaching of this book. Well, even Dalai Lama, Kamla Shila has written this book, and afterwards the teaching has been continued, and Dalai Lama has also listened to this teaching in Bodh Gaya from an old monk, and he passed down this teaching, and he's very happy to pass down this teaching. He's very happy that this teaching could also be continued.
이 소중한 경전을 지니고 공부하는 여러분들에게 특별히 당부할 것은 중도에 대한 이해를 계속해서
The advice I could give to people who are studying the experience of voidness is to widen and expand your understanding, experience of voidness and wisdom. And through the actual practice, also understand that there is no I, and also try to experience, especially the understanding and of understanding the depth of the myth philosophy, and
보살과 월칭 은 중간 학파의 마지막 단계에 있는 기류논증 학파의 대표적인 학자 보살의 수수한 논서들을 중심으로 공부해 나가기를 당부합니다. 기류논증 쪽으로 이제 보시면 공성에 대한 완벽한
and also the complete speech is done for about voidness in the second book of the Kirinonjung, and
중도와 중도 그 공성에 대한
about the voidness, and also and the direction where you need to go forward has been set.
기류논증파의
So the mid school, they need to say the Abhidharmas of the mid school about the voidness, and if you study about the voidness, it will help you. And with that, we are going to complete this study. 2013 we started, then today is 2016. How many years? 3 years.
그래서 여러분께 이 까말라 신라의 그 수습 차제 수행 사례
Kamala Shala's the stages of practice
성불교의 부처님 당시 때 말씀드린
are the teachings that has been spoken at the time of Buddha. And Kamala Shila has edited clearly the teachings of Buddha, and this teaching has been passed down. And in Tibet is very important. Together with the way to Bodhisattva and Lamrim, Kumlim Parva is very important. Abhidharma is one of the Abhidharma that's very important. And so inside is spoken how we need to study. And the method is spoken very clearly.
그래서 이제 여러분들께서 이제 요 얘기를 하고 나는 아직 우리 입중론이
Well,
때문에
because our
강의를 하면 중론은
midway and also not translated, where if I want to speak about them, even to the monks, is difficult. In Tibet, there is Tsongkhapa's work, and so when they start with the pre-book, they continue with the midway. And since the explanation is completed more, they could understand better. But we don't have the scripture translated yet, and so well, I believe there will soon come a time when we will study again together. And also, the Avatamsaka Sutra is so vast, so that even if you are just reading it, it would take many years. So I am still thinking about it, what to do next. But instead of that, well, I think I need to ask your opinion if you're going to do until your death, or if you're going to miss out in between, then I'm also not going to do. So only two of you. You're going to do it.
근데 이제 그 미국에서 번역한 그 굉장히 여러분도 읽기
Well, but the translated work from North Korea, I think it will be very easy for you to understand. Well, I thought they have used North Korean dialect, but it's been translated in Seoul speech.
가서 말이야 그 책꽂이 맨 밑에 단에 그
Please get the book from the bottom shelf.
밑에 단에 책 꽂혀 있는데 그게 화엄경이라고 그러니까 네권 있어.
There are 4 copies of it. Please bring one.
그 이제 여러분이 요 꽃님 요 하면서
So while doing this,
요게 이제
this is the midway. There's also the initial stage and also the concluding stage. The initial part is mostly about dependent arising. Dependent arising and the cause and effect. A lot of philosophical contents. And so it helps you to organize your thoughts.
반품이 많이 있습니다. 그런데 여기는 안에 이제
But here there's Vipassana and Samatha.
중편
So I chose the midway.
보게 됐거든요. 보게 됐는데 대단히 중요한 인연이에요.
The law relation is very important. And
그 텍스트를 갖다 우리가 한국에는 이게
well, this is passed down for the first time in Korea, and through this text in Korean Buddhism,
다른 부분들을 갖다
I think
할 수 있는
it could provide a lot of reference and also platform to fix quite different views in Korean Buddhism. So if we study them, then maybe in our practice, there will be no other book that can help us or lead us so much. So
한국국에서 가르치는 이제
the teachings that's done in Korean Buddhism, just like Diamond Sutra or 대상기실론 or
한국의 선요 도서 서장 이런
other contents and scriptures, if we study taking them as a reference, then even the extreme ideas or other perceptions could also be fixed a little. And I believe these are also texts that could enable them. And more than anything,
이렇게 나란타 대학이라는 것을
when you study the Naranda University,
나란타
Nalanda University, from starting from the Buddha's time, Buddhist teaching, Buddha's teaching has been passed down without break. It has never been stopped, and it has been always been continued, and that's also very important.
텍스트를 갖다
And so please study the text. Again, do not just leave it out after looking at it once, but read the contents a couple of more times and try to have a better idea or understanding. Well, ask me if there are any other questions amongst the things that we have studied.
이게 이제 우리가 1년 동안 하더라도
Well, even if we are going to do for an year,
기껏해야 한 빠지는 주도 있고 그래서
there are also weeks that we are not working, and we also have our occasions.
이게 그 50주가 안 되거든요.
And if we calculate them more, it's about 50 weeks.
1시간 한 20분, 30분 정도 됩니다. 그러니까 이제 한 달에 해봐야 한뭐 8시간밖에 이제 뭐
So in a week, it could only be about 4 to 5 hours. And so even if we study for a year, it's only 40 to 50 hours. And with 40 to 50 hours,
이게 본다는 것이 쉽지가
studying this is not easy. So if you are going to do every day, like 5 times a week, then we can finish in about 2 to 3 years. But even this
국어체가
the 80,000 scriptures, this is Korea Tripikata,
그래서 이제 그 국어인데 요게 4권인가 그래요.
where there are about 4 books, and inside the letters are so tiny.
촘촘하거든요. 촘촘한데 이거 이제 서울에서 영인을 한 거지. 제가 잠깐 읽어볼게요.
Where I will read shortly with a translation.
들었다 한때 부처님은 마가를
Likewise, I heard
땅에 있었다.
Buddha was
기록하였을 때 그 땅은 건강석으로 깨끗하게 꾸려지고 온갖 도배와 갖가지 꽃들로 장식되었다. 가장 묘한
when Buddha attained his Buddhahood, the land was decorated with diamond, and the land was decorated with many different colors, and just like sea filled with gems, and also the light, and also there was a fragment,
목걸이입니다. 하만들이
and also
주까지 보배로 된
there were necklaces, and the gem of which made of 7 stones, it has covered the area, and also was there were many leaves and flowers, and with the Buddha's supernatural powers, the land was clean and also covered, and
무더기로 쌓였으며 한량없는 도량을 아름답게 장식하였다.
mysterious gems filled the area and decorated the area with beauty. It doesn't have distinctive North Korean dialect. It's just like Korean. It's just like South Korean Korean. It's not very complicated. So,
요걸까지 보면 이제 많아서
well, if we look here, because the content is quite vast, where the translation is a little different.
정하장 이제 이렇게 써요. 이게 이제 두 법칙까지만 이제 그렇게 써서 그런 거가 조금 다르지 별로 이제 다른 것이 없어요.
There are not much differences.
이걸로 할까요?
Shall we do with this book?
그래서 이렇게 이제 요거는 모든 부처와 보살들을 부처의 아들은 다 본단에 세계들이 쌓여지는
Buddha sees all his sons and bodhisattvas without conflicts.
들어간 건 또한 없다네. 이제 이런 것은 굉장히 철학적으로 어려운 얘기예요. 일념적 지무량.
Well, the contents are also quite difficult, even in philosophy.
그런 얘기인데 그 안에 번역을 근데 굉장히 잘해놨어요.
But the translation is done very well.
섞이거나 부딪히는 일도 없이 다 한 세계에 들어가지만 그러나 들어간 건 또한 없다네. 이렇게 딱 번역이 아주 딱딱 맞아떨어지게 하더라고요.
The translation is quite clear.
그래서 그러면 요걸 가지고 이 책 한 권을 가지고 여러분이 내 생각에
Then with this book, well, in my opinion,
10시 한 45분쯤 시작을 하면
if we start about 10:45,
10시 40분, 11시 45분 한 2시간 정도씩 계속 그냥 했으면
10:45, 11:45, if we do about 2 hours, I think it would be nice if we can study for about 2 hours and once or twice a year. If we could also take some time to concentrate, I think that could also be nice.
힘을 안 하면 이게 지금
Well, if we don't have that kind of mindset, then we cannot study all the 80 copies.
입법계품만 내가 하려고 보니까 완전히 뱀 가운데 토막 다시 검토를 다 해보니까 뱀 가운데 토막이 돼버려서 입법계품만 가지고서는 뱀 가운데
I don't think it's good to study only a part of it. So we need to start from the beginning.
앞뒤가 다 연결이 되는데 이제 안 본 사람
Well, it could be enough for us, but if someone hasn't studied, for someone who hasn't studied, if they only study the part, then it's only the mid part. So we won't be able to distinguish whether that is that's leading us to where. That's what I realized after a few days of study.
할 수 있겠어요? 하지 못하겠어요?
Will you be able to do it or not?
할 수 있는 사람은 발을 들어보시오.
Well, those who can, please lift your legs where there is no one.
할 수 있는 사람 발 들어보시오.
Those people who can, please raise your legs.
하다가
While doing it,
싫어하는 게 하다가 그 중간에
where the thing I hate the most is stopping in between.
수록 보면 이게 보통 이게 법이라는 것은
And if you stop in between a teaching,
언제든지 중요한 것은 시작과 끝이 동일해야 돼요.
the important thing is the beginning and the end has to be always uniform. But if you have started and if there is no end, and if that becomes habitual, then it acts as an obstacle even in your many different lives. So if you start it and we have to end it, so it's very burdensome for me.
내가 볼 때는 우리가 보통 기실론도 그때 한
In my opinion,
했단 말이야.
where normally we study 3 to 4 years for scripture.
빨리 읽어가고 중요한 것만 이렇게 우리가 봐 나간다 생각하고 이렇게 하면
But even this, if we are only looking at the important things, I think it would take about 4 years for us.
하고
And each time teaching about 2 to 3 hours, and in a week, in an year, two to three times. Maybe there should be some teachings we do the whole week. And if we do that, then we will also be able to look at it once. This Avatamsaka Sutra, the translation is quite rough, and also the Korean translation quite rough, and there are many additional words which are not necessary. But when I saw the North Korean translation, well, the reading is quite easy, and also the contents are not very decorated, and so I thought it could also be okay to do with this.
내 생각에는 이걸 가지고 우리가 텍스트를 보려 그러면
And
이것도 영인을 해가지고 책으로 이렇게 내야 돼.
well, these are also loose copies, and so we have to make bound it to a book. So next week, about next week we can try to give it to the bookstore. Now, those of you who can do it, please raise your hand. And those of you who cannot, raise your hand. Well, you have to be very clear and decisive about it. You need to develop a very strong tolerance to it.
완전 뭐 같으냐면 인도 누가 그러더라 영화보러 들어갔는데 도시락을 싸가지고 들어가가지고.
Well, once someone said, to watch Indian movie, the person brought lunchbox and went in, and so watched the movie, took a break, and there are also some movies about 16 hours. So they dance, and there's also songs, and during the break they eat and watch the movie again. And so the Indian philosophy, it seems like it's being repeated again and again. And since there are many contents like that,
인내심 작은 사람들은 또 깊이 있게 자꾸 사유에 보면 힘이 약한 사람들은 전화 왔어.
and those who doesn't have very much tolerance,
그런 것이 있어서
people also tend to find it boring.
흩은 말씀을 해놓으신 게 하나도 없이 사실상은 아주 세밀한 얘기들이거든요. 그래서 한번 이렇게 성경을 보시면
But there are not many wrong things about it, and also the sayings here are very in detail. So those of you who are studying,
않고 그냥 하음경만 쭉 계속 이제 해 나가서 안에 분만 얘기를 갖다 쭉 계속 집중을 해 나갈 거니까.
well, let's try to continue with the Avatamsaka Sutra without much distraction. So although and so even if you find it boring, please try to tolerate it a little and try to see it. Try to continue with your studies.
그러면 이제 그 안에 진옥 스님은 돌아가시고
Then about 4 to 5 years, I would die. I would pass away.
그래 책을 갖다가 진옥 스님이 요만큼 하다가 요거 요래 놓고 표시해놔 놓고 다음 생에 와서 하면 될 거 아니야. 그렇게 합시다. 끝내시죠.
Let's do that. Let's continue with our studies. Let's end today's teaching.